to another session of Technology by Performance. I'm Ken Umansky, your host, and today we'll explore more of the world of technology. My guest today is Logris CTO of Ceti AI. His technical background includes AI, cloud computing, and crypto. He has applied his PhD in AI to everything from cognitive architectures to spam filters to sentiment analysis to LLM training at a global scale. He has worked as a software architect on big data processing, streaming computing, and microservice development for some of the largest tech companies in the world on IoT systems spanning billions of devices and high-volume data sources like Twitter fire hoses. Logris is also a crypto veteran, advisor to several crypto projects, a frequent technical resource to multiple VCs, and the co-founder and lead technical resource on tokenomicsexplained.com, which makes him an actual professional tokenomicist. Welcome, Logris. Thanks for joining me today. It looks like you've had multiple faceted career in technology, and I'm really excited to have you on this podcast to give your insights. So let's get started. My first question is, major Web 2 companies are laying out hundreds of billions of dollars in long-term investments in AI. They are for-profit companies. How do they plan to recoup that investment and receive a positive ROI? It seems like there's a lot of money being spent, and I think companies at some point in time are going to require an ROI. How do you think that's going to happen?
Well, okay, it's one thing just say that they're laying out some money, but this is AGI as an investment is the single most expensive venture for infrastructure and investment that humanity has ever undertaken. I mean, the if you look at prior to this, it was probably the U.S. highway system, which is around $600 billion adjusted in today's adjusted for inflation, and we're spending on that order every year, as opposed to over the course of a decade, right? The space program was around $200 billion. Going to the moon, the Apollo program was around $200 billion. We're definitely spending more than that, and we're doing it every year, right? So this is, and probably by an order of magnitude, going to be the single most expensive venture that humanity has ever undertaken. And if you look at Web2 technology from the last decade as clue for how they're going to try to monetize that, you come out with basically two monetization strategies that we've seen put into place. One of them is basically a subscription model where you pay by the token, you'll open a session, you'll have a monthly relationship with some inference provider, you will give them queries, and then they will do some work for you and return it. And this would be kind of like if you go to AWS and rent a box, right? It's that type of model. The other type of model, which is what I want to focus a little bit more on, because I think that's what people will gravitate towards, is basically advertisement. So if you go to Google and you type in something, the first 3 to 4 things that come back on that have this promoted tag on them, and they're not the optimal search results, right? They're basically an advertisement jammed to the top of it, and they're distorting the search ranking to some way that's profitable to Google or whoever's paying Google, right? If you go to Amazon and you search for a product and you say, I'd like to buy some headphones or something, the product that comes up at the top, the Amazon recommended product, isn't recommended because it's the best headphones for the price. It's recommended because it's the most convenient product for Amazon to sell you for whatever reason, right? It's a distorted search result that is in bias in favor of the Web2 giant that's providing the service,
Right.
right? So as this relates to AI, they are going to insert biases into the AI. And what that means, right now the biases are kind of obvious. Like
Yeah.
if I go and I say, "Hey, LLM, can you write me a racist joke or generate some, nudes of Donald Trump or something?" Most of the AIs that are out there will say that's against my corporate policy. You'll get some variety of response that says I'm not allowed to do that, right?
Mhm.
But if you basically at that point, you know that you are talking to the HR department of a company. You're not talking to some statistical amalgamation of data from the internet that it was trained on, right?
Right.
Because there's clearly racist jokes on the internet. It has the data to fulfill the request. It just isn't going to because you're no longer interacting with the data, you're interacting with HR.
Right.
Those biases are fairly obvious. What scares me more are the biases that are not obvious in the slightest. So the biases that are insidious, right? When we detect something as being obviously biased, it doesn't get under our kind of mental armor, right? We easily discard it as bad information. It's not trusted, right? But when something comes and has a much more subtle bias over time, repeated over the course of years, it does get under our mental armor. And that's what you've seen happen with social media, for example, over the last, I don't know, decade or so. And you can see how that has led to people being polarized. Extremism is on the rise because that's what the AI models have been pushing, right? They've been
Right.
pushing more extremists because that's what they monetize. They monetize your attention, and so how they get more attention, they pull on your emotional heartstrings, and they feed you towards more, extremist elements because that has been proven to get them more money. So the biases in social media are kind of the biases I think you'll get from AIs going into the next decades. They're going to be pro-corporate, right? And whatever that means, it basically means they're going to be you're selling your mind share, even if you're just using it for a data lookup. It's going to use the ambiguity in every request of yours to further the tech giants' wants. The third way they'll monetize is basically they're going to take everything that you feed them into the query. And if you gave them a piece of code that says, hey, please code review this, you have just given them some small segment of your subject matter expertise as a programmer.
Mhm.
And they are going to steal how to program and turn that into an agent and then automate your job, basically, right? They're going to automate skills into the coming AGIs they're building and everyone that is currently using AI alongside as an assistant for their job is teaching them how to automate your job. And they're not going to give you, money for the training data that you're providing them. They are going to just take and take and take.
So you think AI is really going to eliminate a lot of jobs in the future?
Yeah, I think if you consider the industry at large, you consider all sort of
Every-
capitalistic venture, right? You
Yep.
have everything from diagnostics to finance to information retrieval to logistics to teaching and education. If you consider all of those fields, how many of the tasks of them are informatic in nature? I would say you probably, maybe not 50% of all jobs, but maybe 50% of all GDP, because many of these informatic jobs are actually some of the highest paying jobs in the world, right?
Right.
So we might be able to take maybe 50% of global GDP as the addressable market cap of skill automation in the next several decades.
Well,
That is a massive TAM,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, all right. So what are the problems with decentralized AI and what's it really trying to solve? What does the world look like if decentralized AI is successful?
Well, if the problem is that they are going to take all of your expertise from you and inject their own biases in every response, then the answer is to have an AI that shares your biases instead of their biases, and which you retain all of the query and answers to, right? Which
Right.
basically means private AI, and it means AI that you can control, at least accept, willfully accept what biases that model has. And so you need some transparency in the data set in order to understand what the biases are. Maybe transparency in who is curating the data set that the model is going to inherit the biases from. And you probably want personal agents, right? If you're going to have something that's going to have access to your most intimate details of your life, your full schedule, everywhere you've been, all the pictures of your life, all the thoughts you've had, your diary, your journal, whatever, right? All of your
Right.
emails. If you want to have something that has access to all that data so it can best help you, you probably don't want that to be a for-profit company whose fiscal mandate is to be as parasitic as possible against you. So the decentralized AI is trying to create systems that we can you can have governance over the data, you can have tokenization of the models, you can have models that are loyal to you and not to a Web2 giant. You can control the biases. You can retain both the query and answers in a private form, and it's safe AI. It's AI that is going to facilitate translating your subject matter expertise to an automated skill in an agent that you can monetize. So rather than giving up your skill to Google or to Microsoft and their AI, you'll be able to be a dentist and you'll have 30 years of annotated x-rays of cavities and whatnot. And you'll be able to take that data set and convert it to an AI that can you can feed it an x-ray and it can automatically label all this stuff for you. And that is skill automation, right?
But how do you control the security on that? Um,
On which part of it? Because that's a multifaceted question.
okay.
So
Well,
security on the data,
security on the data. I mean, if it's your life that's being put onto AI,
you don't give it to someone else, right? So the data that's inside the AI is encoded away in such a way that's inscrutable. The data inside the AI, you can't access the training data and reconstruct it from the model that's generated. The model is hugely compacted compared to all of the training data. You might take a petabyte of training data and end up with a model that's half a terabyte, right? That's
right,
2,000 times compression. There's no way you can take the model and then regenerate the training data from it. So the data itself is safe if you don't give it to anyone. Right?
right,
So the next question is how do you give it to someone in a safe form? Well, we have encryption for transit, right? We can say like, here's a private key, here's a public key. We exchange public keys. We can transmit information securely. So then once it enters some other compute provider's possession, then you're relying on trusted execution environments, which
right,
basically say like, okay, I can take this data and I can say that you have sole access to the cards that's going to train on, that no other processes can come in and steal the data from the side, and you're relying on the best trust assumptions that NVIDIA and Intel are going to
Intel,
provide
yeah,
you. Otherwise, you can say, well, I'm willing to trust that Amazon isn't going to scry on me, and then I could go and pay Jeff Bezos,
wow,
$12 a card hour. But
right,
right now in DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure, you can rent the same GPU you could get from Amazon at $12 per card hour for two,
okay.
right?
Do you see AI and blockchain merging in some manner, shape, or form in the future?
Not I'm okay, so they're gonna be useful to each other. They're symbiotic. I don't see them as merging. I think that, for example, we have community ownership constructs in crypto that are very useful for crowdfunding the creation of models.
Mhm.
We have certain cryptography things, like if you look into the Sentient Foundation, they have a way of basically encrypting a data set so that when you train on it, you need a signature from whoever created the encrypted data set in order to do inference on it, which basically means you need the consent of the model owner to do inference on something. So at that point, you can hand out the model to everyone you want. You put it on Hugging Face,
Right,
or you put it on S3 or whatever, and you don't forfeit the monetary proceeds of the inference in perpetuity. And that's huge, right?
yeah,
So now
absolutely,
we can say, okay, you have to pay us, and we can put the proceeds from the payment into some contract, smart contract, and then whoever owns the tokens that are would get a pro rata share of the inference for that, right? So now we can crowdfund the creation of a model, and so you quickly get into, okay, on the training side we have that, but then on the agent side we also have agents that are going to need to compensate. If you think of an agent as embodying some skill, you're going
right,
to create agentic meshes that take sets of these skills and create jobs. And you're going to create agentic meshes of these sets of jobs that create synthetic companies in hierarchies, right?
right,
Just like we compose our software development process at Microsoft or something into this kind of pyramid of subordination, and then within each of those jobs is a set of skills, you'll be able to do composition of a job out of a bunch of single skill models and weave an agentic mesh of those into a synthetic company. And they'll need to pay each other, right? In order for everyone to get their kind of pro rata share for the work that they're doing.
yeah, absolutely,
So it's kind of awkward to pay each other on a bank account because you're not a person, you're an AI, right? So unless you're incorporated in order to get personhood rights for your AI model, which is pretty awkward, right? You don't really have access to money as a program. You at best impersonate someone else, which is fraud. If I give my AI a credential that says it is me, and then it acts on the web on my behalf, I am not just financially liable for mistakes it makes, right? I am legally liable for fraud.
right. Yeah.
And so that's not a very good system for how we're going to have AI agents work. So
No,
not just at
that's
the training level, not just at the ownership level, but at the execution level, these agents are going to need access to monetary systems. And so, blockchains are going to provide those rails.
okay. Well, let's move on. Um, what are the unique challenges of decentralized AI and its evolving ecosystem?
Well, if you are the biggest thing I think it's impeding adoption at the moment isn't so much the tech stack. We have teams working at a, across the board that I think are making amazing technology that can assist with all these things. I think the biggest thing impeding adoption right now is there is no coherent business development pipeline. There is no a coherent or cohesive customer onboarding experience. So if you look at DeFi as an example, it's made of like 100 platforms, teams of like 3 to 5, maybe like 10 to 35, and some of the larger teams like Aave or something, right? It's made of a bunch of small teams that are essentially different companies. And because they're all different companies, no one wants to. It's kind of like you have a bridge between two states. Who pays for it?
Right.
Neither state wants to pay for it. They want the other state to pay for it. Now we do this with 35, and the coordination problem becomes much harder. So how do we get DAI to take all of the major players and form a kind of cartel, mafia, consortium, pick your word, that is going to fund a customer acquisition pipeline that can have white glove, like high touch resources? Because that dentist I talked about before, they're not a computer scientist. They don't know encryption, right? They know they've got 30 years of x-ray data and they'd like to automate an agent and monetize that somehow. They don't have the skills to interact with anything AI, right? That's not their background. But I do want to help them automate that skill. So
Yeah.
they basically need to be interacting on the phone and by email with first people, but later agents that are impersonating and digital twins of those people, those roles, right? To walk them through the full experience from I'm a subject matter expert to I am making money through this automated skill. And there's a lot of steps between there. You have to decide like how is it being funded? Do you want a community ownership or do you want to pay for it up front, right? How private do you need it to be? What trusts are you willing to trust a DeepIn provider with the raw data or not, right? Do you want to rent it and train it yourself? We have a tech stack for that. Are you willing to have someone else train it off a job board? We have a tech stack for that, right? A lot of decisions need to be made along the way, which means you need to explain what are the trade-offs involved in those decisions. They need to have an honest conversation with the priorities of the person that's making that model and making that agent, right? And make them understand what the significance of the decision they're making and make one that's aligned with their values and also assist them with giving you everything you need to do it. Like it's interactive. The analogy I've used is it's kind of like when I go to my tax accountant, the person that they have that's helping me with the federal taxes is not the same person that's helping me with my state taxes, is not the same person that's doing crypto reconciliation. If I have a property like real estate and they want to say like, what's your depreciating asset schedule on this and how we're going to handle those things, that's a different person. So they've got a series of experts that they hand me off in a pipeline from one to the next. So there's never a moment where I feel alone. They're
Right.
walking me through the entire process. And we should create that equivalent pipeline for DAI, for business development, for customer acquisition. And we should take these DAI teams, we should get them out of crypto conferences, and we should go to, the dentistry conference.
Yeah.
We should go to the medical conferences. We
Yeah.
should go to the places where people have the subject matter expertise for the valuable informatics tasks that we want to help automate.
Yeah. I stay away from the dentistry conferences.
Just
Too much
but
pain.
we need to get outside of our little crypto
Yeah, I
bubble
got you.
because there's a massive amount of hype in the crypto circle at the moment. But there's not a whole lot of customers for AI in the crypto circle at the moment. There's way more hype than customers.
Yeah.
So we need to get outside of our information bubble. We need to go into where the automatable skills are, connect with the subject matter experts, and walk them through in as painless a manner as possible the automation of a skill they want to monetize, because that's where the
Yeah.
TAM is.
Yeah. That's how long do you think that's going to take?
Oh, I mean, I think you could start it this year. How long do I think it's going to take to automate $3 trillion of skills?
Yes.
Some time.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So what can my audience do to prepare for the coming world?
Well, okay. What's the coming world eventually going to look like, right? It,
Oh, you've touched on
Matt,
some of it.
yeah, I did. Um, I don't think the Web 2 giants are going to go away. I think they're going to have the lion's share of the market cap, even in a successful model, right? I think people value the convenience and the free to play nature of Web 2 services, even if it is some type of Faustian bargain and they don't know what they're giving up when they do so. They'll just take the free, chat GPT and put it prompt at face value, and that'll be that. So, what that eventually looks like is the Web 2 giants have automated all of the skills, and then those skills are sufficient to bootstrap robotics, and the Web 2 giants are going to automate all the physical skills. So, everything that can be manufactured, all the fruit picking, all the, from farm to table or farm to grocery store at least, aspect has been automated by them, but you don't own any of that. They own all of that
Right.
and they're for-profit companies, and they're not going to share that with you. So imagine some far distant future where there are two countries separated by a wall, a fence, and one of those countries has all the products of superintelligence. Right? They have panaceic pills that can cure cancer. They've got fabrics that are made from carbon nanofiber, whatever mesh, and are just amazing. The tastiest, most nutritious food and the best entertainment and all the products of superintelligence, right? And there's a fence on the other side. You have basically modern day, Djibouti or something. Like,
Yeah.
just uh, what does someone on the wrong side of the fence have to trade if they have different currencies? What do you have to trade between nations? The only thing you have to trade as a member of the poor nation is raw resources, ore, right?
Right.
Tree, lumber, like. But if you're just some poor person, you don't own the property in that nation that basically gives you the mineral rights, you got nothing. You
Right.
have nothing of value. And over time, anyone with anything of value in the poorer nation is going to trade it for some product of superintelligence, right? They're going to buy the thing that cures cancer if it costs them $15 or whatever, but that's going to depreciate the value of the currency of the poor nation.
Yeah.
So eventually there will be no trade because the poor nation runs out of all the resources it can export, and then everyone in there is left without any products of superintelligence, right? Because they have
Okay.
nothing of value to trade. And all
Gotcha.
the natural resources have been exploited and extracted and sold to the richer nation. And so there's nothing to support human life there. There's sunlight and water, maybe. You might have your chickens running around, but like it won't be able to support anywhere near the current 7 billion humans, right?
Right.
So what this amounts to is maybe 5 billion, maybe 6 billion human deaths. And I don't mean deaths from old age. I mean like the average population of the Earth will
Dark.
collapse dramatically down to like 1 to 2 billion people.
Yeah.
And those 1 to 2 billion people will be whomever owns the AI.
Okay.
If you are an owner of the AI, if you own Microsoft shares and they have the AI, if you own OpenAI and they own the AI, if you own Meta and Google, you'll have your pro rata share of all the proceeds of that company, right? And you'll be able to use that to fund a lifestyle basically proportionate to how much of that you own. And everyone else that doesn't own the AI, they have nothing of value to offer. You're economically valueless to capitalism. And what does capitalism do to goods with no economic value? We destroy them. So in a late stage capitalism world, we will destroy you. That is where the state goes until the system collapses down to a point where the only people that are left are the owners of the AI. And that basically is communism. We now own the means of production.
That is
Congratulations.
that's a pretty dark view of the future.
Well, this is actually one of the better views of the future. Like this
Yeah.
is this is assuming that we create a perfect slave in AI and it's smarter than us and it remains loyal to us in perpetuity. The worst futures are Skynet style futures where it just wipes us out, right? Like paperclip optimizer type stuff.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
actually assuming we just take a perfect slave and we try to deploy it through our society with our current governance structures, with our current economic models, with as our world works today. Humans are not like it's not a property of the physical universe that we should be able to make so much more with so much less work, and we should be poorer for it. That's not the universe doing that to us. That is us doing it to ourselves.
Well, yeah.
So if you
So then, well,
apply that thinking, right, to the end game of AI, it's not that the AIs are causing your extinction. It's that humans, through a lack of coordination, through a lack of viewing human life as having inherent value, are
Right.
going to lead to the collapse of our society.
So then what's the role of humanity in a post-AI world?
We have to come up with something that humans can do. If you want to go with a capitalistic model, and there's no guarantee of that, right? You
Right?
could go through a model that says, okay, we're going to add UBI, right? And we're just going to, I don't know, steal literal shares from Microsoft and Amazon, whatever, whoever owns the AI. We're just going to take your stock and sell it in order to get money and give it out to all the people in perpetuity. And we'll do that every year. We could do something like that. But that kind of leads to a future where people lose motivation. A lot of people are only motivated to add anything of value to the world by having a job, by having a need for money. And if you remove that motivation, it's not the people that are currently happy working. It's all the people that grow up into a system that doesn't need them to do anything. Are they going to become, what's the purpose of their life? What's the value of it? Do we descend into some Wall-E style future where we're sitting around in our chairs and robots are tending to our every need, and all we do is go to golf courses and, there's no purpose to our life.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's an optimal outcome either. But that's one way you can go, and that's the route where you say people don't have to add something to society in order to have to like live, right? The other way you can go is to say you do, in which case you have to find some job, some value add that you can scale to 7 billion people. And there is a couple categories of those, right? One category of those is you are having unique, novel experiences, and those experiences are valuable training data to the AI. So it's your job to go and write some papers, have some new novel thoughts. It's your job to go and be a streamer or whatever and play a video game in the most entertaining way. It's your job to basically create the training data for the AIs. So the output of humanity is no longer our labor, it's our experiences.
Yeah.
And then those get fed into the AI as the value add that you trade in exchange for your existence, for all the stuff provided to you by the AIs. In which case you're basically in a reciprocal relationship with the AIs. A
Wow.
different a different answer to this is that due to the inscrutable nature of your brain, by the accidental product that I don't have the source code for it, uh, I can't game you as easily as I can game an AI. If imagine there was a courtroom judge and he was an AI and I could feed him as a prosecutor 10,000 variations on some speech until I got the outcome I wanted, right?
Right.
That
Okay.
is that's a very scary situation.
Hmm.
But if you have a human judge, the fact that you only get one shot at it and you don't know his levers of his brain perfectly, the sort of inscrutability of his mind forces you as a trial lawyer to be much less aggressive in your dishonesty. If you want to go and bribe a police officer to get out of a speeding ticket or whatever, you get one shot at it, right? And you kind of need to do it in a very careful way that gives you plausible deniability, but also allows them to take like you have to be very cautious in your dishonesty when you're dealing with an intelligent agent that you don't have the source code for. And humans, basically, if you create your digital twin, if you create your personal source code that no one else has the model for, you can use that in a game theoretic sense for a bunch of dispute resolution type of stuff that would be unsafe to use an AGI for.
Yeah. Well,
And that can scale to several billion people, right? The third thing I think is just building on the experience thing is just students. Everyone that is going to get a degree learns about something, and then maybe 0.1% of them have some novel thought, and eventually that becomes a scientific paper. If you're just getting a PhD, you go and you take a bunch of classes, and eventually you ask a question that no one's asked before, right? And that's
right.
just how that goes.
Yeah.
If you think of it there are a lot of facts in the world, and then there's a lot of operands that can combine those facts. So A and B, A and C, A or C, A or D, right? When
Right.
the number of facts there are in the world times the number of operands there are in the world to connect them, it leads to more possible inferences that you can draw than any human lifetime or even 6 billion of them could possibly do. And the number of facts is constantly, expanding with time too, right? So like we've got all that. So basically what I'm saying is humans are maybe not the most efficient computers, but they're here and
Right.
they're not valueless. And we should be able to basically scale humanity up to several billion students. I'm not saying everyone is, 130 IQ and really is going to get anything of value out of it. But we could say your UBI is attached to basically just completing coursework, proof of learning.
Right?
And as long as you're learning something, we'll give you food and your daily bread as a modification of UBI. You're basically employed as a student forever. And sometimes you're going to have those novel experiences that you'll be able to turn into things you sell to the AI. So you can combine those two models, right?
So before we end, I have to ask you the question. Are you optimistic that AI is going to be a positive or a negative in the future for humanity?
For the humans that exist, it's going to lead to a much more comfortable livelihood. But with the way that wealth inequality is going, it's likely going to lead to several billion deaths before we reach an end state.
Well, okay, on that note, we're really out of time for today. Thank you for giving us some great information about AI and especially about where humanity is going relative to AI. I think that was a very interesting insight, and I appreciate your point of view.
Very welcome.
How can listeners get in contact with you if they have questions?
So I run the website tokenomicsexplained.com. There's a contact us page on there. You can use any of those means. So I'm a frequent poster on a Reddit, the R Ethereum subreddit. I'm on Discord. I'm on Telegram. I'm on Signal. I have email at logrithebard@gmail.com. And you can reach out, and I will usually respond to email within a day, or come connect with me on platforms, and we can just have discussions.
Well, you know what? I'd really love to have you back because I think there's a lot more we can talk about. But as I said, we're out of time for today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time and for your insight. It was terrific.
You're very welcome. Bye bye.
Okay, don't miss out on the next episode of Technology when we'll discuss how cutting-edge technology is being implemented across many industries and the results it's having with those companies. Remember to please contact Performance Business Solutions at performancebiz.com if you need help with any technology challenge, large or small. Again, I'm your host, Ken Umansky, and until we meet again on another technology podcast, keep innovating.